moving from A to B. Hi, I'm Ian Roofe and welcome to Get Gardening, and in this episode we're looking at how and when and what to do when we want to move plants. And of course we are in the season where lots of plants can be moved from A to B, and moving plants in the garden might be done for a number of reasons. So it might be that we've got to move house, and we've got to move house at a particular wrong time of year, and we need to move things to take them with us. It might be that a plant has overgrown its current location and we need to put it somewhere slightly more suitable, or it might be in a place where it's not flourishing as well as it should be and we want to put it somewhere where it's going to get better soil and a better environment. But there are one or two rules that come into play as to what we can move and when we can move it. So I'm standing in front of a plant just down here, which is Sarcococca. It's the Christmas box, and I'm using that as an example of an evergreen plant. And whether it's an evergreen perennial or an evergreen shrub, then the rule for moving is that we want to do a autumn move or a spring move. So ideally sort of October, November will be an ideal time, and then March, April. And we say that autumn and spring is ideal for evergreen plants because if we do get a particularly cold winter, and we have had some relatively sort of good frost at the moment, but if we get a period when the ground is actually frozen for days on end, then if we were to move an evergreen plant during the middle of winter and it sat in the soil and we did not give it extra water and care and attention, because the groundwater around the roots is frozen, is locked up, and the top is still losing moisture because the air's still moving and the sun is still shining, there's every chance that that plant could actually just die where it is sitting. But if we move it in the autumn and the spring, we generally have warmer soil, there's generally less harsher weather, and although we will still give it the water and the attention that it needs, there's a much better chance that the roots will actively be growing and they will get down into the soil and the plant will cope with its move. Now, if we've got deciduous plants, and we'll move over this way for that, possibly something a deciduous shrub like this. This is a Stachyurus praecox, but it's really just an example of a deciduous plant. And at the moment, as you can see, it's now budding up to flower, but it hasn't got any leaves on it. Well, deciduous plants, we have a much longer season to be able to move them. And we can move them any time from leaf drop, which will probably be about sort of October time, through till February, March, maybe even April at a push, but it'll be very dependent at that end of the season on what the actual weather is doing. So if we think it might be a dry spring, we won't want to move it too late into the spring, and we want to allow time obviously for the plant to get settled in and to allow its roots to get established. But we can move any time between that period, even in the middle of winter if it's particularly cold, because the plant has lost all its foliage and it's much less prone to losing moisture. The only thing we've got to be aware of is that we don't want to be moving anything, relocating it in the garden if there's snow on the ground or if the ground is completely frozen. The reason for that is because obviously it'll be difficult to get your spades and your tools in, but also it will put the plant's roots under extra stress to be moved during that very, very cold period. So there are one or two things we have to follow. If you've got containerised plants, maybe you've bought plants, and you want to plant them, well, that can be done at any time of the year. That is the beauty of container grown stock, and that's the wondrous thing that we have when we visit garden centres and nurseries or plant fairs, that we can buy plants when we see them, when they're looking good, and we can plant them 365 days a year if we want to, providing the soil is not solidly frozen or snow covered. And it might be that you've got plants you are growing in pots in your own garden. So it might be something that somebody's bought you, or you've had it in a really nice container and you're not quite sure whether you can plant it out. Well, it's just the same as anything you would buy from a retail outlet. It's containerised, it's got a lovely root system, it will have mature roots, and it will also have fibrous roots in there. So as long as you plant it somewhere, it's got the right soil, it's got the right location, And as long as you can make sure that you can keep it watered, even through the coldest months of the year, some of the plants will still want moisture to get their root systems going, then you can move it anytime you like. And it's often better that if a plant is looking particularly stressed in a pot, if you have to move it and you don't feel it's quite the right time, well, it's got two chances, and it'll probably do better out of the pot than it will being in a confined space where its roots can't get out and absorb the moisture and the nutrients that they need. So I'm hoping that might clear a few things up. We've looked at evergreens, we've looked at deciduous, and we've looked at container grown stock. So providing you follow those key tips, you'll have plants which will be happy and healthy and will get away and give you a fantastic looking garden. Dun, 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 dun. That's what it does, isn't it?
I love it when you do.
Okay, this is in my head. Stop recording now.
Right, okay.
Don't, 'cause I get embarrassed.
Okay.